The Vatheian Empire had been in the business of acquisition, which was a polite way of saying kidnapping, enslaving, and generally ruining people's days. For approximately 3,000 years, they were good at it. No, scratch that. They were exceptional at it. Their success rate hovered around 97%, which in galactic terms meant they were the equivalent of that annoyingly perfect student who aces every exam while everyone else is just trying to remember which end of the plasma rifle goes boom. Their ships were sleek, their weapons were cutting edge, and their reputation preceded them like a bad smell in a recycled air system. When a Vatheian battlecruiser dropped out of hyperspace near your position, you had two options: surrender immediately or surrender after they shot out your engines. Either way, you were surrendering. It was just a question of how much property damage you wanted to accumulate first. The galaxy had learned to accept this reality with the kind of resigned shrug usually reserved for traffic jams and tax audits. The various governing bodies, councils, federations, collectives, and one particularly ambitious hive mind, had issued strongly worded condemnations. They'd imposed sanctions. They'd even tried a coalition military response once, which had gone about as well as a chocolate teapot in a supernova. The Vatheians had simply laughed, collected their bounties, and continued conducting business as usual. What made them particularly dangerous wasn't just their military superiority, though they had that in spades. It was their methodology. The Vatheians had turned capture into an art form. They studied their targets, learned their weaknesses, exploited their fears. They knew exactly which species could be intimidated, which ones needed to be sedated, and which ones would break after 3 days in a sensory deprivation chamber versus the ones who needed 5. Captain Zelthros exemplified everything the Vatheian Empire stood for, which was unfortunate for everyone who wasn't Captain Zelthros. He stood at 8 feet of scaled muscle in cold-blooded calculation, with 4 arms that could each bench press a small shuttle and a track record that made other captains quietly weep into their alcoholic beverages of choice. In 15 years of service, he'd never lost a target, not once. His success rate was literally 100%, which he mentioned frequently, often while making extended eye contact with subordinates who disappointed him. Today's target should have been laughably simple: a human cargo vessel, the Persephone's Gambit, because humans apparently named their ships after ancient mythological figures who made poor life choices, had been broadcasting a distress signal for the past 6 hours. Engine failure, life support compromised, navigation systems offline. It was the distressed vessel equivalent of a wounded gazelle limping through lion territory while wearing a sign that said, "Eat me, I'm delicious." Humans, Zelthros mused to his first officer, a younger Vatheian named Crexus who still had that eager shine in his eyes that experience and crushing disappointment hadn't yet dulled. Soft species, Category 3 physical capabilities, no natural weapons, no enhanced healing. They die if you stab them, which is refreshingly straightforward compared to those crystalline Zephrani who just regenerate and hold grudges. Crexus consulted his datapad with the enthusiasm of someone who actually enjoyed reading technical specifications. Intelligence reports indicate humans are relatively new to the galactic stage, Captain. Only 200 years of faster-than-light capability. They've established 47 colony worlds, mostly in the Outer Rim territories. Militarily insignificant, their largest vessel displacement is barely 18,000 tons. "Adorable," Zelthros said, in the tone one might use to describe a particularly non-threatening houseplant. "What's the crew complement on this one?" Manifest shows 8 registered crew members. Current life signs read... Crexus paused, scaled brow ridges furrowing. 1. Just one signature, Captain. Engineering section? Even better. Probably the only survivor. Traumatized, desperate, alone. Zelthros flexed all 4 arms in sequence, a gesture of anticipation that had terrified hundreds of captives. This will be over before second meal. Boarding party of 12 should be sufficient. Actually, make it 8. Let's not waste resources on overkill. The Vatheian battlecruiser, Eternal Dominion. They weren't big on subtle names, aligned itself with the drifting human vessel. The Persephone's Gambit looked exactly like what it was supposed to be. A mid-sized cargo hauler that had seen better days, possibly better decades. Scorch marks decorated its hull. One engine nacelle hung at an angle that made engineers wince. Atmosphere vented from a dozen minor hull breaches in lazy spirals of frozen condensation. Almost sad, Crexus observed. The ship's falling apart. Then we'll have to work quickly before our prize suffocates or freezes. Prepare the boarding tube, standard extraction protocol, stun weapons only. I want this human conscious and compliant. Damaged merchandise sells poorly, and I have a reputation to maintain. The boarding party assembled with practiced efficiency. 8 Varathians, each armed with neural disruptors, restraint fields, and enough combined combat experience to invade a small moon. They were professionals. They'd done this exact operation hundreds of times against dozens of species. Humans, with their fragile bones and their single-heart circulatory systems and their ridiculous dependency on oxygen at very specific pressures, would be no challenge whatsoever. The boarding tube extended with a pneumatic hiss, magnetic clamps securing to the Persephone's Gambit's outer airlock. Cutting torches made quick work of the sealed door. Life support might be failing. But someone had locked down the entrances, probably hoping rescue would arrive before the oxygen ran out. Cute, muttered Vexor, the boarding party leader. They think locked doors stop us. The airlock peeled open like foil. The boarding party flooded through with weapons raised, ready for nothing, really. They were expecting a terrified human, possibly huddled in a corner, maybe trying to hide behind cargo containers like that would help. What they found was considerably more unsettling. The corridor lights were functional, not flickering like dying systems should flicker. Just on. Steady. Normal. The atmosphere reading came back as perfectly viable. 21% oxygen, appropriate pressure, comfortable temperature. For a ship supposedly suffering catastrophic life support failure, it was remarkably comfortable. Vexor, one of the team members said slowly, consulting his scanner. These readings don't match the distress signal. Environmental systems are operating at 98% efficiency. Sensor malfunction, Vexor decided, because the alternative was thinking. And thinking led to worrying, and worrying was for species that got captured. Proceed to engineering. Target is alone and contained. This is routine. They advanced through the ship in standard tactical formation, which was honestly overkill for one human, but made them feel professional. The Persephone's Gambit was larger inside than it looked. Cargo haulers usually were, all that empty space for containers. But the corridors felt wrong somehow. Too clean, too orderly. Ships that had suffered catastrophic failures didn't usually have neatly labeled bulkheads and clearly marked emergency stations. Hello. The voice echoed through the ship's intercom system. Cheerful and human, and absolutely not what 8 heavily armed boarding party members wanted to hear. Oh, good, you made it. I was starting to worry you wouldn't take the bait. Wouldn't respond to my distress call. Welcome aboard the Persephone's Gambit. I'm Maya, and I'll be your host for this evening's festivities. Please note that the exits are currently sealed, The fire suppression system is armed, and you're all standing on deck plates that I can electrify from here. But don't worry about that. I'm sure we'll all be friends." The boarding party froze. Vexor's scales rippled in confusion, which was the Vatheian equivalent of a nervous twitch. "Identify yourself properly," he barked at the nearest intercom panel. "You are being detained by the Vatheian Empire under Galactic Salvage Protocol 7. Surrender immediately, and you will not be harmed." "Oh, I know who you are." The human's voice carried the kind of amused sarcasm that suggested she wasn't taking this nearly as seriously as she should. "Vatheians, slavers. You've got that whole four-armed intimidation thing going on, scales that probably look very impressive in your recruitment posters, and a success rate you're very proud of. 97%, right? That's pretty good. Not perfect, but pretty good." 97.3%. Vexor corrected automatically, then felt stupid for engaging in banter with prey. "Well then, let's talk about that remaining 2.7%, shall we?" The corridor lights went red. Not emergency red, not warning red, hunting red. "See, here's the thing about distress signals," Maya continued conversationally. "They're really easy to fake. You just broadcast the right codes, make your ship look damaged. A little creative scoring with a plasma torch does wonders. Vent some atmosphere for authenticity, and wait. Pirates show up thinking they'll find easy salvage. Slavers show up thinking they'll find easy targets, and idiots show up thinking they're the apex predators in this scenario." One of the boarding party members checked his scanner again. "Vexor, I'm reading weapon systems activating throughout the ship. Multiple defensive emplacements coming online." "In a cargo hauler?" Vexor's voice cracked slightly. "Well, it was a cargo hauler," Maya said helpfully. "Then I got bored during a 6-month solo run and decided to tinker. Engineering background, see? Military engineering specifically. Explosives specialization. They called me Maya the Mauler back in the service, which I thought was a bit on the nose, but soldiers aren't known for subtle nicknames. I got out, went civilian, started running cargo. But old habits die hard, and I really hate slavers. Morally oppose the whole concept. So when I heard the Vatheians were operating in this sector, I thought, why not set a trap? The deck plates beneath their feet began to hum. "You're insane," Vexor stated, which was the kind of obvious observation people make when they're starting to realize they've made terrible life choices. "Clinically? No. Functionally. Debatable. Effectively. Extremely. Now then, gentlemen, and I'm assuming you're all gentlemen, though I apologize if I've misgendered anyone. Let's discuss the house rules. You're currently standing in a corridor that I've converted into what military engineers call a kill box. That's technical terminology for everyone in this space dies horribly. I've got plasma vents in the walls, explosive bolts in the ceiling, and those deck plates you're standing on. They're connected to the ship's main power grid. I can pump enough electricity through them to light up a small city, or 8 Vatheians. Same principle, really. You can't kill us all," Vexor said, trying to sound confident. "We're armored. We're trained. You're one human with access to ship systems. You're absolutely right. I can't kill you all at once. That would be boring. I'm going to kill you slowly, 1 at a time. Maybe 2 at a time if I'm feeling ambitious. I've got time. You don't. Your ship is sitting out there wondering why you haven't reported in. My ship is full of delightful surprises, and I haven't had this much fun in months. The first Vatheian died before anyone realized what was happening. One moment he was standing there, scales gleaming under red lights, weapon raised. The next moment, a section of wall panel exploded outward with the force of a shaped charge, and he was suddenly in several pieces that had trouble maintaining their original spatial relationship. "One," Maya announced cheerfully. The boarding party scattered, which was exactly what they should have done tactically and exactly what Maya had predicted they would do. They split up, seeking cover behind bulkheads and cargo containers, trying to establish defensive positions. "Oh good, we're playing hide and seek. I love this game. Fair warning, I know where all of you are because I built this ship and it's covered in sensors. You know where I am, engineering section 3 decks down, but getting there requires passing through multiple compartments that I've spent 6 months converting into elaborate death traps. It's like a dungeon crawler, but with more actual death and less experience points." 2 Vatheians made it to the end of the corridor and through a pressure door before it suddenly iris shut behind them. They heard the distinct hiss of atmospheric venting. "Ah, you found compartment 7, Maya said. "That's the explosive decompression room. Very popular with people who enjoy having their internal organs forcibly externalized through any available orifice. You've got about 30 seconds before I vent that section entirely. There's an emergency airlock at the far end, but the door controls might be malfunctioning. They malfunction a lot lately. Mysterious electrical problems." The 2 Vatheians ran. They were fast. Their species had evolved as pursuit predators, capable of sustained sprinting that would make Olympic athletes weep. They reached the emergency airlock in 15 seconds, which was impressive. The door was sealed, which was not. One of them started frantically working the manual override. The other began shooting at the door's control panel. Because when subtle doesn't work, violence is always plan B for well-trained military personnel. The atmosphere continued venting. Their suits had emergency oxygen supplies, but those were measured in minutes, not hours. Through the porthole in the door, they could see the next corridor, pressurized and safe and completely inaccessible. 20 seconds, Maya counted down helpfully. 19, 18. You know, if you apologize nicely, I might open the door. I'm reasonable, sometimes. When I've had coffee. Have you had coffee? Vatheian physiology can process caffeine, right? We could pause this whole murder spree thing and have a drink. I'm kidding. Keep working that override. It's cute watching you try. The door opened at 3 seconds remaining. Both Vatheians stumbled through, gasping in the sudden rush of breathable atmosphere. Behind them, the compartment they just evacuated finished venting, explosive. Decompression sucking out loose debris with a shriek of escaping air. 2.5, Maya amended. Half credit for the assist. You boys work well under pressure, literally. The remaining boarding party members, now down to 5.5 if you counted the partial person situation, regrouped in what appeared to be a cargo bay. Large space, multiple exits. Cover positions, tactically sound. "Vexer," one of them said, and it says something about their situation that his voice was shaking despite being a hardened combat veteran. "We need to retreat. This isn't a capture operation anymore. This is a massacre." "We don't retreat," Vexer snarled, though his scales had lost some of their earlier confidence. "We're Vatheians. We don't lose to single humans with mechanical tricks." "Mechanical tricks?" Maya's voice boomed through the intercom, and she sounded genuinely offended now. "I have engineered a comprehensive multi-layered defensive system utilizing advanced plasma physics, sophisticated electrical systems, creative applications of artificial gravity manipulation, and really excellent welding skills. This isn't tricks. This is art. Military art. The kind that gets you court-martialed if you deploy it against civilian targets, But you fine gentlemen are armed hostiles conducting illegal boarding operations. So we're operating in a beautiful gray area where I can indulge my creativity. The cargo bay's artificial gravity shut off. All 5.5 Vatheians suddenly found themselves floating, which was disorienting when you were used to weighing roughly 400 pounds. Their weapons drifted. Their orientation became meaningless. Up and down ceased having relevant meaning. Then the gravity came back on, at 3 times normal strength. They slammed into the deck like meteors, armor cracking under their own amplified weight. Bones broke. One Vatheian's arm bent at an angle that arms weren't meant to bend, which caused him to scream in a pitch that suggested serious reconsideration of life choices. 3 Gs, Maya explained conversationally. That's 3 times Earth normal gravity. Humans evolved on a heavy gravity world, relatively speaking. We're built for this. Your species evolved on a planet with 0.83 standard Gs. You're optimized for speed and agility, not compression resistance. At 3 Gs, you weigh 1,200 pounds. Your own skeleton becomes a liability. Your hearts, plural, yes, I did my research, are struggling to pump blood upward against increased resistance. You've got maybe 2 minutes before you start suffering organ damage. One Vatheian managed to raise his weapon despite weighing as much as a small vehicle. Credit to him for determination. He fired at the nearest intercom panel, which exploded in a shower of sparks, but didn't actually solve any of their problems, since Maya had approximately 80 more intercom panels throughout the ship. Rude, Maya observed, and ineffective. I'm not actually in those panels. I'm in engineering, remember? Sitting in a comfortable chair, drinking coffee, watching this on multiple monitors. I've got camera angles you wouldn't believe. This one's particularly good. Really captures the anguish. The gravity returned to normal. The Vatheians gasped, which was the universal sound of beings who'd just been reminded of their own mortality in an unpleasant fashion. 2 of them didn't get up. One was unconscious. The other was making sad whimpering noises while holding his arm. 3 left standing, Maya counted. Well, standing is generous. Conscious and mobile. How about this? I'll give you a sporting chance. There's an emergency escape pod in compartment 12, 2 sections forward. It's functional. I haven't trapped it. Scout's honor. You're lying, Vexer wheezed. Probably. But what choice do you have? Stay here and I'll do something creative with the thermal regulation systems. Ever been flash frozen, then slowly thawed? It's apparently quite painful. Or take your chances with the maybe-trapped escape pod. Clock's ticking. I'm getting bored, and when I get bored, I start experimenting. They ran. What else could they do? The 3 remaining mobile Vatheians, supporting their injured comrade, fled through corridors that suddenly seemed far more menacing than before. Every wall panel might hide explosives. Every floor section might electrify. Every door might seal and trap them. They found compartment 12. The escape pod sat there like salvation, hatch open, interior lights welcoming. It looked legitimate. It looked safe. Captain, Vexer said into his communicator, proud to his last moment that his voice only shook slightly. Mission compromised. Human is hostile and has weaponized the entire vessel. Requesting immediate extraction. We're taking the emergency pod. Static answered him. Captain? Captain Zelthros? Oh, your communications are jammed, Maya said, sounding apologetic in a way that suggested she wasn't apologetic at all. I've been broadcasting white noise on your frequencies since you boarded. Your captain has no idea you're dying in here. He probably thinks you're taking your time, being thorough, professional, the Vatheian way. They piled into the escape pod anyway, because slim chance beat no chance. The hatch sealed. The launch sequence initiated. The pod detached with a solid clunk and began boosting away from the Persephone's gambit on emergency thrusters. Inside the pod, the three conscious Vatheians allowed themselves momentary relief. They'd escaped. Battered, traumatized, down 5 team members, but escaped. They'd failed the mission, they'd probably faced disciplinary action, but they were alive. The pod's interior lights flickered, then turned red. "Did you really think?" Maya's voice came through the pod's internal speakers, which should have been impossible since the pod was detached and independent. "That I'd give you an uncompromised escape route? What kind of sadistic engineering genius would I be if I let you just leave after you came to my ship to kidnap me?" "The pod's computers," one Vatheian whispered in horror. "She hacked them before we even boarded. Got it in one. I've had 6 months to prepare this trap. I hardwired surprises into every system. That pod has been compromised since I installed it. Now then, gentlemen, let me explain what's about to happen. In approximately 30 seconds, the pod's thruster fuel is going to mix with the oxygen supply in a ratio that's chemically interesting, but biologically unfortunate. The resulting explosion will be visible from your battle cruiser, where Captain Zelthros will watch his entire boarding party get vaporized and wonder what the hell just happened. "You're a monster," Vexer said flatly. "No," Maya corrected, and her voice lost all its humor. "I'm a human. We're from a heavy-gravity death world where everything evolved to kill everything else. We survived ice ages, plagues, predators, and each other. We built civilizations on top of mass graves. We turned warfare into science and science into weapons. And we really, really don't like slavers. You came here thinking humans were soft, easy prey. Category 3 physical capabilities. We're Category 3 because the categories stop at 10 and someone had to recalibrate the scale after they met us. We're not the strongest species. We're not the fastest. We're not even the smartest. But we're creative, we're vindictive, and we hold grudges like other species hold festivals. You wanted to capture me? You should have brought an army." The pod's thrusters ignited in a sequence that was definitely not manufacturer recommended. The explosion was indeed visible from the Eternal Dominion. Captain Zelthros watched from his command deck as a brief bright flare marked the end of his perfect record. 8 Vatheians, veterans of 100 capture operations, gone in an instant. "Sir," Crexus said quietly, "should we send another boarding party?" Zelthros stared at the still drifting Persephone's gambit, sitting there looking innocent despite having just killed 8 people. His perfect success rate, maintained over 15 years, had just become 99.9%. One human, one damned human civilian engineer, had done what entire military coalitions couldn't. "Open a channel to that ship," he ordered. The view screen flickered. A human appeared, young by their species standards, maybe 30 years old, with dark hair pulled back in a practical bun and eyes that held the kind of casual amusement usually reserved for people watching particularly stupid game shows. She was holding a coffee mug that said, "Galaxy's #1 engineer," in what appeared to be handwritten marker. "Captain Zelthros," Maya said brightly. "So nice to finally meet you face to face. Well, face to screen. I've heard wonderful things about your operation. 15-year career, perfect success rate. Wait, sorry, had a perfect success rate. Past tense now. That must sting." Every muscle in Zelthros's body wanted to order weapons fire, to reduce that insufferable ship and its insufferable occupant to their component atoms. But something in those human eyes suggested she'd accounted for that too. probably had contingencies. Definitely had contingencies. "What do you want?" he asked, each word extracted with visible effort. "Want? Nothing. I've got everything I need right here. But I'll tell you what I'm going to do. I'm going to send a very detailed report of this encounter to the Galactic Trade Commission, the Human Colonial Authority, the Independent Merchant Spacers Union, and about 40 different news organizations, complete with video footage. You boys looked very dramatic, dying in various creative ways. The galaxy is going to learn exactly what happens when Vatheians try to capture humans who don't feel like being captured. Your 97.3% success rate is about to become the galaxy's most popular cautionary tale. "We will hunt you," Zelthros promised. "Across every system, every world, you cannot hide." "Oh, I'm not hiding. I'll be right here, running cargo routes, minding my business." But here's the thing about us humans. We're social creatures. We share information. We warn each other. And now every human cargo ship, every human colony, every human who might have been an easy target for your operation is going to know your methods, your tactics, your weaknesses. We're going to share countermeasures, trade tips, compare notes on creative ways to explode boarding parties. She leaned forward, smile widening. "You came here thinking you'd capture one human. Instead, you've united an entire species against you. Congratulations on the strategic blunder." The channel closed. The Persephone's Gambit engaged its engines, fully functional engines, never actually damaged, and jumped to hyperspace, leaving the Eternal Dominion floating in empty space with 8 fewer crew members and substantially more problems. Inside the battlecruiser, Crexus cleared his throat nervously. "Sir, what are our orders?" Zelthros continued staring at empty space, where his perfect record had disappeared. "Update the threat assessment database. Humans are now Category 7, extremely dangerous when provoked. Do not engage without overwhelming force. Do not underestimate despite physical limitations." He paused. "And send a fleet-wide notification. The human, Maya Reeves, is never to be approached again. Any captain who encounters her is to reverse course immediately." "Sir, that's essentially giving her immunity." "That," Zelthros said tiredly, "is called learning from experience, which we've just paid for very, very expensively." Across the galaxy, in various ports and stations and colonies, humans began receiving a message. It contained video footage, technical specifications, and a detailed manual titled, "So You've Been Boarded by Slavers, a Practical Guide to Aggressive Self-Defense." The author was listed as Maya Reeves, Chief Engineer, Persephone's Gambit. The dedication read, "To everyone who's been told they're prey. Sometimes the gazelle has teeth." Within a month, Vatheian boarding operations in human-populated sectors dropped by 73%. Within 6 months, the Vatheian Empire quietly updated their target acquisition protocols to mark humans as high-risk captures requiring specialized teams and substantial hazard pay. Within a year, pulling a Maya had become slang in human spacer communities for turning defensive scenarios into offensive opportunities. The Persephone's Gambit continued running cargo routes, its hull still scored and damaged-looking, its distress beacon still occasionally malfunctioning at convenient moments. Maya maintained her engineering skills, her coffee consumption, and her creative approach to problem-solving. And somewhere in the depths of space, an escape pod still tumbled through the void, its interior lights eternally red, its communication systems broadcasting a single looped message on all frequencies. They wanted a captive. She turned them into corpses. Mind the lesson. The Vatheian Empire, 3,000 years old, apex predators of the capture industry, 97.3% successful, had finally encountered the 2.7% that haunted their statistics. Turned out that 2.7% was human. And humans, as the galaxy was learning, really hated being underestimated, almost as much as they hated being captured.